let's start our session on HR Spotlight, employee engagement. If we think about employee engagement, it's something that a lot of people nowadays are talking about. It's not just something that HR or leaders in organizations are posting about or talking about. It's something we see in popular culture, in social media. Parang bukang bibig siya ng madaming tao. And even if they don't say the exact words employee engagement, it's something that's being talked about when people give their sentiments or perceptions on what is going on in the world of work. I think as individual contributors or employees, as managers, leaders, or future professionals, it is great to be able to talk about employee engagement right now. It's such a great time for different techniques and strategies that are emerging. So together, let's learn more about that. For those who don't know who I am or those who are joining us for the first time, let me introduce myself. I'm Elizha Corpus and my firm is Elizha Corpus Consulting. I'm a management consultant and I specialize in topics like culture transformation, leadership development, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I work with different companies here in the Philippines and with multinationals as well. I intentionally do that so that I can experience having a different range of clients and experiences. I love learning about the different cultures that all these organizations can provide. I did my undergrad here in the Philippines, but I actually went to the States to take my master's in human resources and labor relations at Michigan State University. Over there, that's where I learned a lot of the theory around employee engagement and all of the other strategies involved in people practices. I got to practice all of those theories when I moved to Seattle, Washington after school, and I joined Microsoft's Global Learning and Development team. It was the best time to be there because we were going through a culture transformation in the company, and the team that I was in, we were directly involved in making those efforts come to life. When it comes to engagement, I think Microsoft was such a great example to learn from. 150,000 plus employees around the world, many different cultures, many different requests, many different perspectives and ideas about what work should be like. And from a company perspective, we tried to grapple with all of that and find ways to create a robust, comprehensive employee experience that everyone will enjoy. And most importantly, an employee experience where everyone can feel like they can thrive in that environment. And with that, everyone, let's go through what we will be discussing in our session for today. Number one, we are going to talk about what is employee engagement and what responsibilities fall under this HR function. Ano nga ba itong pinapag-usapan natin? Hindi naman kasi lahat ng company may dedicated employee engagement function, di ba? Pero ano yung pinapag-usapan natin when we say employee engagement and what responsibilities fall under that? Next, why is employee engagement essential in organizations? Why is it worth it to talk about all these things? What benefit does it bring to an organization? And then, of course, the most important part is that we walk away with some tangible actions that we can do. No matter what level you are in, we have a very diverse audience today. No matter what your role is or what your level is, there are things that you can do to make it a more positive employee experience in your organization. So let's talk about those actions that you can do and really get some tips and insights that we can apply in our own teams and our own companies. To kick us off, we always love to hear your thoughts and your opinions and to have a discussion with you. So to start, what comes to mind for you when you hear employee engagement? Go ahead and go to www.menti.com and use the code 3621-9943. I'm going to bring us all to our Mentimeter right here. Great. I think we have a lot of answers, and you can actually also vote for answers that you like. Let me just check, and there we go. I think we have our Facebook people answering as well. So for everyone, because there are a lot of questions about it, let me just repeat. The form for requesting certificates will be shared at the end of the session. And then when it comes to the presentation, it is on Facebook Live. So you can visit our page and look at the video there after the session. All right. For those who are not able to join on Zoom anymore, they can go to Facebook Live. The code, again, is on the screen, the code for Menti, or you could also click the link that I am posting right now in the chat. If you are having issues with the call, disconnect and then connect back in. That's usually something that helps, or go to the Facebook Live instead. All right, let's see what you all have here on Mentimeter. What comes to mind for you when you hear employee engagement? People say teamwork, committed, yes, because the goal is to have employees who are committed to their team and to the organization. Great. It's about the employer-employee relationship. Activities, yes, very interesting. We'll hear more about our guest speaker when it comes to ano nga ba yung mga ginagawa sa employee engagement, especially from an activities perspective. All right. Collaboration, training, skills development, and team building. That's a very common sentiment, actually, when it comes to employee engagement. Okay, let's see. What other things do people have here? Timely company events. Okay, later on, we'll hear more about company events from our speaker and what are the different things that comprise employee engagement versus ano nga ba siya talaga from a strategy perspective. Okay. Employee engagement to me is a way to listen to your employees. Okay, yes. A big part of employee engagement is knowing what people are thinking. And so listening is a very important skill related to it. Activities that boost productivity and retention, right? So there's an outcome that we're looking for. We want employees to, of course, be more productive, to stay in the company, and to also enjoy, right? I've been seeing some answers around fun. Okay, keep all of that in mind. And then later on, we will check in with our guest speaker to see if all of these are part of employee engagement or not. All right. So why are we all here? What makes this an important topic anyway? It's a topic that has gone mainstream. Everyone is talking about it, especially if you go on TikTok. There are so many different terms nowadays that's related to employee engagement. Quiet quitting is the popular one. There's also loud laboring. I don't know if you've heard about loud laboring. Loud laboring daw is parang quiet quitting na hindi naman masyadong madami yung ginagawa mo. You're doing the bare minimum, but you're being loud about it. You complain a lot and you kind of tell people how busy you are when really you're not busy. So that's loud laboring daw. And then there are also things like lazy girl jobs. I don't know if you've heard that from TikTok, but lazy girl jobs are like just the easy things that you can do, right? So you can get by. And so many other terms. I think we will waste time if we talk about all of those terms. But the point is, nowadays, employee engagement has become a topic of conversation, not just for HR professionals or for leaders. Everyone's talking about it. So it's high time that we figure this out. Bakit? Kasi ngayong nagiging mas mainstream na siya, mas madami ng opinions yung mga tao. Employees are more empowered to learn about what's good, what's not good. And sometimes we might think that's a bad thing because then mas marami silang expectations. But I encourage you to think about it as a good thing. Nowadays, employees are more aware of how a workplace should be. They're more vocal about it. And as HR professionals and leaders, it gives you more opportunities to make those improvements come to life. Important yung engagement from a financial perspective because the cost of low engagement to the global economy is $8.8 trillion. This is from Gallup's latest study. Every year, they have a report called The State of the Global Workplace. They estimated that for 2022, this was the cost of low engagement. That means it's not just because we want happy employees. It's also something that's hurting businesses from a money or financial perspective. If you ask the disengaged employees what they want to change, these are the things that they mentioned. 41% said that they want to see a change in engagement or culture. 28% said they want higher pay and better benefits. And then 16% said that they want more activities, strategies on well-being in general. If you look at all of these answers, the biggest one is 41% on engagement or culture. This means that 41% of the disengaged employees around the world, they said that if the company improves the way they handle culture, it's something that will encourage them to participate more or engage more. Think about that and the importance of what we are talking about here today. If we look at the rates of engagement around the world, we can see that only 23% of people say that they are thriving in the workplace. This is actually already at an all-time high. In all of the years that Gallup has surveyed employees around the world, ngayon pa lang siya naging ganyan kataas. So mataas na daw yan. But it's not, right? 23% is not even half of 100%. 59% are not engaged. This is where your opportunity lies. It's a big group, so you can either sway them to be more engaged or thriving, or they can be even more disengaged. In this report, they also said that 18% of employees are actively disengaged. What does that mean? These are the people who are actively saying, ayoko na, di ba? Nandito na lang ako para umupo. Wala na akong gagawin. Magpapakita lang ako. I'm not going to be good at meetings. I'm going to submit my things late. I'm not going to tell my manager if I'll be late or absent. They are actively not contributing to their teams. That's a bad thing because these are people that may also be bringing down the engagement, productivity, and motivation of the other people in their teams. That's something to take note of, and that is why it's so important to have employee engagement strategies so you can address these 3 different types of engaged employees in organizations. Let's look at the Philippines. Most of us, and I think all of us, because I restricted the audience for this webinar, we are in the Philippines, and our engagement rate is actually the highest in Southeast Asia at 31%. That's a good thing, right? We seem like we have it figured out. We are the highest in our region. But on the flip side, we are also the highest in stress levels. Feel nyo ba yun? Stressed ba kayo? Yan, parang totoo, di ba? We have a lot of social media presence, and even anecdotally, we can see online that we seem to be a very stressed group, a very stressed nation. That's because of many different things. Traffic pa lang, stress na, di ba? So, marami naman siyang factors. But now we have to kind of look at this. Are we giving our employees the most holistic engagement perspectives to help them deal with what we know to be high levels of stress? It begs the question, do we have the right employee engagement practices in place to create a thriving workforce? Knowing how stressed people may be in the country, are we tailor-fitting our employee engagement strategies to help from that overall, more holistic perspective? To help us answer this question, we actually have a guest speaker that we have invited for today. Our guest speaker is Keisha Kibanoff. I'm going to ask Keisha to turn her camera on now and say hi. Keisha is actually my classmate all the way from high school, and she has been in HR for all of her career. But what I think is even more special is that Keisha has had a long career on employee engagement. If I think of someone who really has specialized in this area, Keisha is the one who comes to mind. I think she is the perfect person to learn from today. So we are going to turn it over now to Keisha. Hi, Keish.
Hi, thanks so much, Elizha, for the warm welcome. So as Elizha mentioned, we were classmates in high school. So mga 2 years ago lang. Joke. It's so nice to diba? Hindi naman halata sa atin. But I hope that I'm glad to see everyone here and that we're all here to learn more about employee engagement. So I will share my presentation so that we can learn more about it and discuss it. Let me just share it here. All right, I hope you're able to see the screen already.
Yes, Keish, we see it.
Okay, great. So again, thanks everyone for the warm welcome. And shout out to my 2 rabid fans in the live stream. That's my mom and my brother. I think they're tuned in there. And hello, good morning to everyone, even on this very hot and very traffic day. Now, so as Elizha mentioned, what we want to achieve together today is to be able to discuss the foundations of employee engagement, what it is and why it matters. Also discuss practical tips on how to set up or level up your own team's employee engagement. And third, since we come from many different industries, backgrounds, roles, I understand if we also have different ideas of what employee engagement is and different questions that we have in mind. And that's fine. I am glad to see the responses earlier that people are also quite familiar with the term employee engagement. We'll talk about that more in a bit. And after discussing the lecture segment, we'll have some time for Q&A, and I'll be very happy to answer your questions. Okay, so first off, to also give you some idea of how I learned about employee engagement, I'll share a bit about my HR journey. I was not taught about employee engagement in school. In school, what I was introduced to was the more familiar parts of HR, like recruitment, training, compensation and benefits. And this was around almost, actually 10 years ago, to be honest, when we were there in school. So after graduation, I applied for a recruitment post because that was what was available at the time. And in my interview, the recruiter told me I'd be a good fit for employee engagement. I think because maingay ako. And she asked if I was game. Actually, I had no idea what it was. But since I was looking for a job, sabi ko game ako. Ganun tayo, di ba? So eventually, I got that job in Smart Communications and handled employee events and well-being activities as an HR assistant. Now, after my stint there, I moved on to employee relations and labor relations in Crown Plaza. It's a hotel managed by Robinson's Land Corporation, and this is actually my first role in the 𝘄𝗵𝗲𝗿 group, where I've been ever since. So I think since I was, as I mentioned, maingay and a 𝗲𝗲𝗃𝗶𝗿 in our 𝘄𝗵𝗿 group HR activities, after some time, I was contacted by the employee engagement team in JG Summit. That's the group's corporate center, because they had an opening. So I joined JG Summit as an HR associate and later on promoted to HR officer and most recently employee experience and engagement manager. So that's how exposed I've been, I guess, to employee engagement over the years. And through the years, I've been part of many versions of an employee engagement team. Sometimes employee engagement was folded under total rewards, sometimes under talent management, sometimes under employee experience, and even others. But what is employee engagement? So I saw also some responses that echo this, and I'm glad to see them, that employee engagement is a measure of someone's attitude at work. It's how they feel, how they act towards helping the whole organization meet their goals. It's how committed employees are in helping the organization achieve the shared goals. And it shows in 5 different ways. Your sense of pride, so how proud you are to be part of the company, your work satisfaction, whether or not your work gives you a feeling of personal accomplishment. Third is what we call employee advocacy, or if you as an employee would recommend this company to others. Fourth is organizational commitment or intent to stay. It's if an employee rarely thinks of looking for a new job elsewhere. I see some reactions in the chat about how we're remembering certain scenarios. And the fifth is discretionary effort, or if the company motivates employees to go the extra mile. So this is what strictly speaking employee engagement is, no? Like it's how we feel about being in the work environment. It's the holistic measurement of if an employee's feeling towards their employer and their role. So we know that highly engaged employees, if they also have the right skill set, the right role enablement, they can really succeed in their job and they can help the whole company be more productive. So if we look at it, employee engagement is actually quite abstract. It's the whole feeling that an employee has about their work environment. It's an effect of everything they experience in it. The culture, their boss, their teammates, their physical offices, their policies, everything that they experience there. So with this, it sounds like the end goal of employee engagement is very broad, no? It's very abstract. It's a very tall order. But when it's done right, it helps ensure that your employees are happy where they are and will help us all to reach our goals together. Okay, so I have a quick clarification. Since gutom na ako, joke. Okay, if we look at employee engagement, this is like the whole thing, right? It's how you feel given all factors in your work environment. It's like the soup. And everything you experience at work goes together to result in how committed you are, how happy you are. We also have the term engagement activities. So what we're familiar with is engagement activities can come in the form of family day, Christmas, sports fest, and these are also good to have in our environment, in our work environment. But they're like an ingredient that we add to overall employee engagement. Employee engagement activities are most impactful when part of a bigger purposeful plan. Syempre, di ko kayo i-judge if mahilig kayo kumain ng garlic alone, but it's better when it's all together with the whole meal. So that's what we're gonna talk about in a bit. So just to share some benchmark numbers also, we've seen in studies that organizations with high levels of engagement compared to those with low levels of engagement really tend to have a better effect overall on the whole workforce and even on the organization's goals. You have greater revenue, greater income, less accidents, less absence days, lower turnover, higher net promoter score, and all. And it makes sense, no? Because you are coming from an environment wherein the people are more engaged, they're more committed to their work, they're more into what they do, they get accomplishment from their work. So when we have good employee engagement, it results in a better effect for the whole company and the whole workforce in that company as well. So now that we know what it is, how do we accomplish good employee engagement? And how do we assure that we can have a good employee engagement practice in our company? So for this is a simple framework that we have. It's to remember 𝘁, I tried very hard, Elizha, actually. I wanted to make this like 𝘗s, or I wanted to make it like chika, yung medyo mas madali pa alahanin, but it really went to this. And the last letter, I couldn't think of another letter for it, so it ended up as 𝘁. But it seems like it's meant to be din naman. because when I searched for what this also means, chi is like the circulating vital energy that flows through everything, all living things, through mind, body, soul. It's something that ties everything together. So when we want to think of how to get good employee engagement and we want to think about energizing people, let's remember chi and let's go through what each of this means. No? Good employee engagement is customer-centric, holistic, and inclusive. If my suggestions kayo to reword inclusive into O and S para maging 𝘄s, I will accept. Or if you have any other suggestions that will make this chika, game din ako. But for now, we will discuss chi. So the first letter is C, or customer-centric. This means that we really link or base our employee engagement initiatives on what employees actually need based on data and direct employee feedback. So the best engagement initiatives are really targeted to what your employees specifically need. No? And sometimes it might not even be flashy or grand. It might not be an international trip or the most high-tech engagement app, but it should be something that makes a significant impact in their own situations based on their actual needs. So when it comes to customer-centric employee engagement initiatives, even the little things matter. Sometimes what employees look for is, for example, simple recognition, if that's what is needed. And the recognition need not be grand, no? It does need to be a whole extravaganza. It happens also in every day. It could be as simple as instituting, let's say Feedback Fridays or like a Thankful Thursday, wherein we make a habit of giving appreciation to people within our team, or even just like encouraging managers and teammates to give more appreciation to people who they work with, even with something as simple as a note. It can make an impact if this is what employees are saying they wish to experience more of, if it is recognition, for example. Or if it's another specific area that they need, like if they want to have more growth and development, it can be as simple, as cost-effective as establishing practices and norms related to growth and development. Like, is it that you set a specific time once a month? No, you as a team all learn a new skill related to your job, or even simple norms like making it a habit to have frequent and effective performance conversations. So it can be simple. What's important is that it is directly linked to our employees' needs and feedback. How do we get feedback from employees? So there are several kinds, and we'll go through them. From quantitative feedback, qualitative feedback, and even looking into your own people data and analytics. So first, how do we get feedback? One of the foundations of how we can get really good feedback related to the overall employee engagement is to have an employee engagement survey. So just as an intro, usually what you'll see in an employee engagement survey, there are quantitative questions, or people will be asked to rate from a scale of 1 to 5. 5 is the highest or most positive. And it will look at different kinds of dimensions. Of course, there is the employee engagement dimension. So it asks people how engaged they are. It's the abstract feeling. It's the 5 that we saw kanina. Yung I'm proud to work for this company, questions like those. It's really asking you as an employee how you feel. I get a feeling of personal accomplishment from my work. I would recommend this company to other people. So the 5 that we saw earlier, those are usually what's in an employee engagement dimension. But at the same time, for it to be actionable, the employee engagement survey also has actionable dimensions like communication. It has questions on company leadership, usually around 3 to 5 questions, growth and development, job enablement, pay and benefits, all the different dimensions and facets of HR that you can imagine, and culture that you can imagine, people experience. There are also questions on that. So just to give some examples of these questions so that you have a flavor of what each dimension is like. For communication, it could be questions like, there is clear communication in this company, or there is honest communication in this company. For growth and development, it's questions like, I have opportunities for career growth. For job enablement, it could be questions like, I have the tools I need to do my job. So these are just a sample of the kinds of questions you can see in an employee engagement survey. There are a lot of tools online or samples online of employee engagement questionnaires that you can see. So if you're a bigger organization, it could help that you really get a third party or an additional vendor to help you run the survey very scientifically. They can even do the number crunching for you, or they can give you a tool that already crunches all the employee engagement data with all the statistics. Syempre, we love math. Or if you're a smaller company, you can also look at what kinds of questionnaires there are online. What's important is that though you ask employees directly on what they think about these, and that we make it a safe environment from them to answer. No, so usually people answer anonymously. There is no what you call witch hunting. There's no trying to find out who said what. We make it very, very safe for people to honestly say what they think in the employee engagement survey, so that you also get a useful information that you can really work on. Because the point is that we really get information that you can base specific actions on. And aside from all of this, usually when you run the employee engagement survey, it will tell you which items are most impactful for employee engagement, which ones matter to them the most, para we also know kung ano yung uunahin natin, or what we will spend more time on, what we will spend more effort and resources on. The second part of the employee engagement survey is not just quantitative or numbers, there's also qualitative. So we ask them in comments, what are we doing well? What else can we do better? So positive and for improvement as well, so that we know what is good to continue, and we know also what we can start to do, or what points for improvement we can do. So I think if you imagine doing an employee engagement survey in your company, you can imagine that you'll be getting a lot of information, but maybe it might not answer all your questions yet, and that's fine. Because an employee engagement survey is meant to really be like a starting point or a springboard for further discussion, so that if there are dimensions that you see are really quite low or for improvement, or if people say things like we need more support in this area or this other area, you can have also follow-up discussions with them, with their leaders or with their team as well, so that together you can discuss what kinds of specific actions can be part of your overall employee engagement approach or employee engagement strategy, and to also consider with them, to co-create with them what the solutions will be. I'll give an example. So sometimes in employee engagement surveys, a common dimension that people really want more of is growth and development. And I totally understand them, because like, for example, we're here today in a learning session because we ourselves also believe in growth and development, right? And with that, growth and development can look different for everyone, depending on what it is you really want. Some people want to learn the same skill but at a higher level. Some people want to learn a different skill. Some people want to be exposed in a different part of the company. So it really can be very person specific. But even if this is a lot to also contend with, it's good that it's going to be at least based on employees' feedback on the engagement survey. Okay. Part of looking at the feedback and data that we have from employees and their needs, it can also help to study your company's people data and analytics. So this going in depth, and this is like a different session, but just to give you guys a little taste of it. We know that data can show patterns in behavior. It can also bring employees' needs to light and show areas where the company can improve. So there's a saying that data can show what it is that people don't say. So sometimes when we look at the data, like whether it's a lot of people being late, or maybe there's like a lot of certain absences, or we struggle in a certain kind of delivery of a certain product or metric, it can show that there's something underneath that now. So it again acts like a springboard for needs. For example, if in your company, let's say you have a significant number of resignations, and the resignations, hypothetically, let's say they're all less than 6 months. So what they have in common is they're quite new in the company, less than 6 months. If this certain scenario happens, it might be that you need to look into your onboarding experience. Is it that employees need help making better connections as they stay with your company? Do they need more help socializing into the company? Or do they need to be better equipped, better enabled through tools of trade, information, anything to help them in their specific new hire journey to help set them up for success. So that's just an example of how looking at the data can bring to light certain issues that can be acted on so that people will be more engaged, more committed, and overall more satisfied at work. So that is the letter C. Next, we have letter H, holistic. So we'll take it across these three themes. If it's holistic, it's linked to mission, vision, values, and EVP. It's harmonized across all of HR, and it's driven by all of leadership. So let's go through each of them. Okay, so when we say link to mission, vision, and values, I'll give an example. In the 𝗲𝗃𝗿𝗃 group, our purpose is this. We have an unrelenting commitment to provide our customers with better choices, creating shared success with our stakeholders. And our core values are three. We dream big, we do the right thing, and we own it. So whenever we do 𝗲𝗃𝗿 group-wide programs, especially related to culture and engagement, we link it to these because this is what we want to achieve. We socialize the purpose and values across the whole group. We have recognition, group-wide recognition, wherein we recognize those who really embody these values through their actions, through initiatives, through what they do at work, and even outside. And we even have employee volunteerism, wherein people can participate in being part of the purpose, in creating shared success with stakeholders like communities, and in giving back, owning it, stewardship, building it better together. So we link or build our different programs to our mission, vision, and values. Of course, if you have a certain set of mission, vision, and values in your company, that's the kind of culture that you want to develop. So it's good to have engagement initiatives that speak this and that let people learn it and that let people experience it. Okay. Another is, aside from the mission, vision, value, some companies already have an employer value proposition. An employer value proposition is basically what you as an employer offer as a company to your current and potential employees, so to candidates and to current employees. So just to make it a little more zoomed in, within the 𝗲𝗃𝗿 group, where I am is in 𝗳𝗲 Summit, the corporate center. And our employer value proposition is where passion meets diverse possibilities. Di ba ganda? So we describe this in three. We build real connections, we nurture character growth, and we foster a culture of care. I mention this because sometimes when you think about employee engagement activities, the sky is the limit. Not just that, the sky is also the langit. As in, you can do anything when it comes to employee engagement. But the question is, what do we do that is important to us, that is important to our employees, and is part of the value proposition and culture that we want to uphold? So we always turn to this for 𝗳𝗲 Summit. When we talk about building real connections, we actually have different activities, pocket activities like town hall or mixers, wherein we make it easy for people to meet other people from other departments, get to know them, build connections within the group, and get to know who are from the other teams within the group. We also nurture character growth. So it's not only the employee engagement team who is involved, also the learning and people development team. They also help all of 𝗳𝗲 Summit CCU to have individual development plans, to act on their development, and to let them learn more. And third is we also foster a culture of care. So this manifests in our safety and security and health teams, health and wellness initiatives, for example, including caring for our mental health. So it's good to have a holistic view, like it's really linked to our mission, our vision, our values, and even our local employer value proposition. Hashtag we are 𝗳𝗲 Summit. Hashtag experience diverse possibilities. And when we talk about H, it's really harmonized across all of HR. There are so many different stages in the employee life cycle. There are so many different things an employee can experience. And we hope that when we do these different experiences and different stages of the employee's life cycle, there are initiatives that will make them feel committed, that will make them feel satisfied with their work, that will make them want to recommend this company to others. So it's not just activities, although activities are a part of it, especially if part of your brand is to really make connections and help people gel together better. But also look at the rest of the parts of the employee experience and the employee life cycle to see where we can harmonize and really have the best effect on employee engagement. Okay. Another last part of H is driven by all of leadership. So did you guys know that actually 70% of what an employee experiences at work is directly influenced by their manager or their immediate superior? As in 70% of what an employee will experience at work. And basically 70% of what they rate in the employee engagement survey can be directly influenced by the person managing them, the person who they directly report to. So it's really important that when we approach employee engagement, it should also be driven by all of leadership. The leadership, whether at the top or at the middle management or any level, should also be aligned with providing the same kind of culture and employee engagement experience for our people. Because the leadership really sets the tone for the whole organization. And in order for the employee engagement initiatives to be sustainable, to really have a lasting effect, we see that the leadership has to drive and support this people agenda. And the last in our 𝗁 is inclusive. So this goes into two different subcategories now. We think of inclusive by way of accessible. We want it to be able to work for people of different demographics. So when you have an employee engagement activity, is it that people of different demographics will be able to enjoy this or partake of it? Will it work for people who are of different generations, different life stages, like for people with kids, people without? How do we make it so that this engagement activity is really accessible for people of different demographics? And we also want to make it low barrier, meaning easy for people to participate. It's easy for them to use, it's easy for them to find, it's easy for them to go to, given that there's so many other stressors, as Elizha mentioned earlier. So I think one of the practices that we've seen also across the 𝗲𝗿𝗃 group, especially now that we're that the work arrangements are changing for a lot of companies, is that we have very purposeful culture and engagement on-site events for different business units. So what usually happens is if there's a specific day, we like the people are all on site. That's when they have the town hall, so that is able to already provide clear communication. There's also the socialization that happens in the town hall. There's even recognition that happens within the town hall. So it's really making it more purposeful and making it as easy as possible for people to participate. Like if there's already a day that everyone's going to gather, we can also time our engagement activities there so that it's really a great experience for our people, and it makes their bonding that day even more meaningful. Okay, so with this, let's say that we've tried all of these already. How would you know if you have good employee engagement? What are the outcomes that you should track, and what's the ideal state? Okay, so when it comes to the outcomes, I suggest we can look at it through these three lenses: how people feel, how people act, and what is the impact. So we will know how people feel from their direct feedback. It can be from employee engagement survey, or it can even be as simple as asking. I, as a manager, I make a practice of once a month, I have a sit down with each of my direct reports, and we discuss how they feel at work and even outside of the work setup, like just to understand also where they're coming from. And it's a good way for me to get to know them, for them to get to know me, and for us to be honest about how we feel in terms of the work environment and how we're supporting them. Second is how people act. If people are engaged, if people are committed to the company, then their performance would also improve. So if you see that people's performance is improving based on the performance review or based on the performance discussions, if you have it on a different frequency, quarterly or more often, that can also show that the engagement initiatives across the whole life cycle are working. And the third is impact. So whoever your own organization's customers are, if they're external, internal, you would see that the customers are more satisfied with what the employees provide, because the employees are more committed. And it also leads to business impact, like better revenues, better numbers, better volumes for the organization. So these are the outcomes that show that the initiatives are working. Yeah. And with that, that is the brief intro on employee engagement, from what it is, what we can do, and how we can see if it's working. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Keisha. So everyone, let's give Keisha a quick round of applause, even if she can't hear us, but she'll see your claps there in the chat, right? I love how Keisha created that framework for us, 𝗁. So it's customer-centric, holistic, and inclusive. Very easy to remember, right? All right. So just what we'll do now is we have some questions that Keisha will help answer. While I'm asking these questions, please go ahead and start thinking about what are some of your own questions that you would like to ask Keisha, and then later during the Q&A, we can ask her those questions, okay? So Keisha, we've heard from you that employee engagement it's a lot, right? Like it's a very big area, and like what you've said, the sky's the limit, but also it's the limit. Ibig sabihin, we can't do everything that we may want to do all the time. So maybe from your perspective as an experienced professional in this field, what are some of your top challenges as you try to grapple with how wide this area is and how limited sometimes the budget and the resources, time and energy that we have?
Challenges, no? How much time do we have? Joke lang. I'll limit it to two themes.
Okay.
I would say the challenges that we usually experience in employee engagement are on two parts. First is on planning, and second is on execution. So first is planning. I think one of the biggest challenges is really having the right plan in place, because I know a lot of employee engagement teams who really work hard. Actually, a lot of people in HR and admin and management really work hard. But what is difficult is trying to discern what is the right thing to do, no? And even considering that our employees are people, their needs change because we're people, right? So our life stages change, the things that we need in our own lives change, that would help make us more committed to our job. So I think the first challenge is really on planning. And I think that's why it helps to have a very regular feedback cycle with your employees to know what they need, how are we doing, what are we doing well, and what can we do better. Even if, like, let's say if you're a much smaller team, it can even consist of, let's say, asking on a regular basis what kind of activity the team would want to do together. Like if it's a very intimate team, it can help. Now it's even that informal, but having the right plan is the first challenge. The second challenge related to execution, one I would say is getting the support of everyone who is involved, and knowing that it involves everyone. That's quite a challenge, no? From all the leadership, all the HR top to middle management. We've experienced in different companies that when we were very new with the employee engagement survey, of course, if you give some certain kind of feedback to people, the teams can be quite defensive, no, and try to explain it. But that's natural, right? It's natural for us to have that kind of human reaction. But it's good that we make it an open conversation, and we try to make it a safe space to share that information with people so that they can also act on it. Not to punish anyone, not to witch hunt anyone, but really more of what can we do, because we all have the same goals, right? We want to achieve success together as a group. And the second thing that is difficult with execution is that really it's a long-term effort now, given the holistic objective. Like I wish there could be an easy way to do it or a quick way to do it, but it's not one size fits all for a lot. It's really like the long game when it comes to employee engagement. And we have to keep looking at the different parts of the life cycle to see how we can keep people committed in our teams.
Yeah. I think that goes to a lot of what we've been talking about. For those who have already been here with us in our previous sessions, we always say that the secret sauce, if you will, of HR is being able to align and integrate everything, right? So even if you only have very few or very simple employee engagement activities, if that helps push an overall strategy that you have for people practices, then that's really all you need. Like, it doesn't have to be the most bongga Christmas party. But if your intent is for people to feel like they are proud to be in that company, then you can find ways to align with that goal. And then I think the other thing Keisha mentioned about support is it very much highlights the idea that the whole company should be involved. Diba, parang misconception kasi na employee engagement is trabaho ni HR. So, ni Keisha, trabaho ni Keisha. So it's not always like that, right? Yes, HR, employee engagement, under HR usually, we plan and push and align, try to execute on these things, but who's accountable for employee engagement? It's not just Keisha and the employee engagement. It's all the leaders, managers, employees in the organization. So all of us are involved, which I think makes it hard, but also very, very exciting. It's really at the end of the day. Keisha, I have a second question for you.
Sure.
So we don't have unlimited energy and we don't have as much time as Beyonce, diba? So if you could recommend 1 to 3 things that organizations can do to improve employee engagement, what are some of those things that you can recommend?
Okay. Aside from having Beyonce as your HR head, if I can recommend a few things, I'll recommend to improve that I have seen is really quite impactful when it comes to employee engagement. One is in the short term to get direct feedback, like whether it's on initiatives that you're currently doing or if it's feedback on what we want to do in the future. It really helps to have direct feedback. I think even just the act of asking people what they think will work is already showing a message to employees that you care about their opinion, you care about what they think and what their needs are. So that's a good first step. For long term, the other thing that needs to be done is really to get everyone in on it. So usually starting from the top, from the leaders, and with them having the same view as you on employee engagement and really getting their support, you can trickle down to also have the rest of the organization to also support overall employee engagement.
All right. So thank you so much for that, Keisha, right? Very important to look at what you can do with the time that you have now, but also keeping that long term in mind, because that's where we can show being strategic as HR professionals. All right, Keisha, before we head over to our questions from our participants, and we have a lot, so thank you so much for that, everyone. I know that there are some people here who maybe want to switch over to employee engagement, or like college students who are thinking about wanting to be HR professionals, specifically in employee engagement in the future. So what skills would you recommend for people in that scenario? Like, what can we learn more about so we can be successful employee engagement professionals?
Okay. So for this one, I have a different acronym. It's 𝗂𝗃𝗃. Yeah. Pwede rin 𝗂𝗃 because that's my team right now, Culture Engagement Calls. But pwede rin Elizha Corpus Consulting. So this is the 𝗂𝗃𝗃 that I recommend if you want to be a successful professional in the employee engagement function. First is E. So empathy. I think underneath, above everything, empathy. We need to understand how people feel. We need to know where they're coming from so that we can also advocate for them, support them, and give them the right kinds of initiatives. We need to understand how they feel and their needs. Second is conviction. So conviction to do what is right, or like our values, to do the right thing, integrity. It's similar to conviction, to do what we believe is right. Because when you do something like asking for people's feedback and looking at the data, you really have to have conviction to stand for what people need and support their needs so that we can all be engaged. And the third, which is also C, is continuous improvement. So some initiatives that we've done before might not work anymore for now, like given how the situations can change, the landscape can change for employees and even people's needs in their life stages. So we keep improving as we all evolve.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's about wanting to learn that field and having that growth mindset, right? Of wanting to continuously improve. Because yung sinabi ni Keisha kanina, di ba? Nag-school siya, pero hindi naman talaga specifically tinuro sa school na ito yung employee engagement, ito yung gagawin mo. With a lot of things about HR, it's something that you learn continuously as you do the job, and also as you seek out resources from different people, different firms that offer those resources. So hopefully that gives a lot of you encouragement if you want to get into the same field as Keisha. All right, Keisha, we have some questions from the participants. I'll start reading some of them. And then I think for a lot of you, you have questions that are like in a similar topic or thread. So I'll start condensing some of these, okay? All right, so Keisha, first question. How would you reconcile employee engagement with employees wanting to be left alone and those who would want to just work from home? The person has some more explanation. We cannot schedule engagement activities during the work week. Our employees would rather stay at home since an engagement activity over the weekend would be an unpaid day. So I have some thoughts, but what are your thoughts first?
Okay. So when I hear that kind of scenario, parang when I hear that kind of situation, I wonder like what I feel like there's more to this story. I feel like there's more behind it. Like I kind of want to do a little root cause analysis and wonder why someone like would prefer not at all, no, like not even on a compromise arrangement, not even on a once a month. I don't know the specific situation here, but there could be other factors why this person doesn't want to do it on whichever day is included. It's either they don't see value, in which case we might need to evaluate what kind of program this is. Baka it's not in line with their needs, baka it's not in line with their interests. Or when we have situations like these, there can be other factors at play, no? Like it could be they're really overloaded with work. It could be that they have something happening at home. There's so many possibilities about why someone would not want to participate at all, even if there is something that they can, enjoy out of it. Because when it comes to how we work, when we work in an office, especially like with the different roles we have, it's not just necessarily outcomes. There are a lot of people who work with people to get a bigger task done. So when you think about it, having the right like cohesion within the team, having the right commitment and feeling of really liking what you do will affect the other outcomes if they don't build the right relationships with each other. It's also part. So I think it begs further looking at where this person is coming from. I hope the manager of this person can have discussions wherein the person will open up about what it is that is behind this, so that together they can work on it, so that it won't be at a standstill. What do you think?
So what Keisha shared, I think, is great because it's from the employee perspective. This is about like getting the employees' feelings, thoughts, context, so you can apply that to whatever activity you're doing. I have something challenging because now sometimes as a consultant, my job is I deal with the leaders of the organization and I question their practices. So if I were talking to your leaders and I know about that context, siguro yung una kong tanong is, bakit hindi tayo pwede mag-engagement activities pag weekday? Anong fear mo dyan, di ba? Ano yung ayaw mong gawin as a leader kaya hindi mo ino-authorize yan? Second question is, bakit unpaid ang engagement day? Pinapapasok mo sila sa trabaho, and if required siya, that means dapat babayaran ko sila. Because if you're saying it's a team building that's mandated or required by the company, that means it's a work day. Versus if it's a team bonding na kahit konti lang tayo sa team, hindi siya officially sanctioned by the organization. If it's just a team bonding that's not officially sanctioned, then okay, like that's unpaid, right? Because that's just something you want to do. And you should let people decide if they want to attend or not. But if it's an activity that you say everyone should attend, think about that, right? Siguro dapat binabayaran sila dahil work day yun. Now, I get the sentiment behind the question. The sentiment behind the question is like, why aren't people willingly wanting to hang out? Parang ganun yung tanong niya, diba? So then, to be able to get to that sense, do the things that Keisha told you about, right? Like, what are they feeling? Ano ba yung situation nila? Baka ayaw naman pala nila yung activity. What do they really need? So I think it's a two sides of the coin kind of thing. Yes, you can ask your employees what they need and provide that. But at the end of the day, you also look at policy. What are the policies that are not aligned with what outcome you want to see? Yeah, so hopefully that works. Something more doable and something more challenging for you. All right, Keisha, next question. For a small organization, like maybe 15 employees, can you maybe share some easier tips to create employee engagement? And I get why this makes sense, right? Because maybe things are not as formalized for companies this small. If you have some easier or quicker things that you can share.
Yeah, it's fun to play around with activities that can be done by smaller organizations, because usually you have a lot of like leeway, and it can be very informal. It can be very flexible because you're catering to a very specific and smaller team. So I think if you have a team of like let's say 15 or less, it's easier to actually get everyone's input on what it is you want to do. I think what can work is to first agree on what everyone is willing to do. Like, first, are we okay with the once a month thing? Are we okay to, if it's going to be an engagement activity, is it going to be once a month, and what kind? Like, you can even do a one-to-one vote, because we're a smaller team. At the same time, I will also call back to what you mentioned, Elizha, which is about the policies. So aside from providing means for this team of 15 to connect and to become closer to each other or bond with different activities, we also look at the entirety of what is being provided for this workforce. Now, are the policies enabling? Are the different stages of their life cycle providing a good experience for employees?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so hopefully it doesn't discourage you if you're small or if you don't have a lot of budget. There are always things that you can do, but go back to the intent, right? What Keisha said, like, what are you trying to do anyway? How are you listening to them so they feel like they matter, they're valued, that their contributions are seen? I think at the end of the day, yun yung gusto natin, di ba?
And just to add a little like specificity also, like once you know what the group's interests are, there are so many possibilities on what you can do. If you want it to be like you just go out and have a meal, or if you want it to be like a little master chef challenge, if people like cooking, we would do this thing before where it was like a no cook master chef challenge, meaning like you don't bring anything that has fire. And then
Okay.
so it depends, no? Like magluto ng like sushi roll or something. Like something na medyo close, like within a smaller team is manageable. Because I can't imagine doing that for like a team of 1,000. So it depends, no? You can get specific, even if it's as simple as like you have a lunch out, or like you have a quick activity, or you play board games. It can work as long as it's what people would be willing to do if it's in line with their interests.
Yeah. All right, Keish, the next set of questions are all about managers. So basically, these questions are asking, how can HR best handle situations when really the cost of disengagement is the immediate supervisor of the person? So let's say, for example, the managers don't really want to contribute to employee engagement. Maybe these managers, they don't try to manage their direct report in the best way that they can.
Okay, so I think with this kind of situation, it's the manager who is a little challenging. I have several tips. One is that if you have, parang how do we say na it was the manager who's difficult? If there is like specific data that can help back you up when eventually someone discusses with this manager, usually from the HR or the manager's manager, it can help. It could be like, hey, in your team the attrition is this much. In your team the engagement is this low. In your team, etc., etc. Because you also have to get the manager to understand first situation. Okay, that's one. Another thing that can help is if you have a people metric, whether it's engagement survey or some kind of more simplified metric of getting feedback from people, 5-star rating. It really will help your people agenda if it's in the scorecard of the CEO or the owner of the company. meaning something they look at as part of their own performance. And if it's in also, then it trickles down. It's in the scorecard of the CEO's direct reports. Like you have to get them to understand this is part of the whole thing, right? Because when we take care of our people, our people will take care of our customers. It's really the entire thing. We can't have a successful organization without taking care of our people. No, that's what makes it work. So it has to be in the scorecard, sana, of the CEO and trickles down to each of the managers, such that every manager also has a people-related metric. Just to share, in JG Summit, we really have a commitment to growth and development, such that as we have a percentage of our own performance appraisal, wherein it is about one, our own growth and development, and if you're a people manager, ensuring your team's growth and development. So it has to be there so that people will pay attention to it, right? Because if managers are thinking about other metrics like productivity or certain kinds of revenues, but are not looking in their scorecard for a people-related metric, it would be really challenging to get them to care about it if it's not also something that they're graded on. And there are other ways also, but I think it helps that whoever this manager reports to should also be on the same page as you if that's something that you want to address in terms of getting them to really have a mindset shift, because we have to have that mindset shift first of the manager for them to be able to act on it. So those are just some suggestions siguro on how you can have that mindset shift, by presenting to them facts, by making it part of their scorecard, and working with someone who can also show them that this is part of what we need to keep our minds on.
Yeah, I think your answer also answers another question. I'll read the question just so we can relate it. So the question was how to deal with senior employees that don't like to break old practices. For example, the company is now ISO certified, but most of the processes are not followed since they find it to be a burden and don't want to try. So I think that's related, because if you are not putting it in the scorecard, then they think that it's just a nice to have versus something they have to follow. So if you have processes or employee engagement practices that you want senior employees to do, make them accountable to it by really putting that as part of their objectives or goals, KPI, whatever you do in your company. Make that a part of something you measure their performance against. If you think about performance management, it's really up to you. It's up to the company to say that this is what matters in terms of performance. So maybe revisit those as well to make sure it aligns with what you're trying to do. All right, Keisha, next question. So this person says, let's go to Facebook actually. So on Facebook, some companies have specific clubs or particular interests like dance, music, etc. What's your take on this as someone from HR's employee engagement team in terms of planning and execution of company events? So I get, diba? As HR, you want to streamline things, but then people also have like organic or more bottom-up things that they do. So what's your take on that, Keish?
So when you talk about like employee interest clubs, I think they can be very beautiful. If they come up organically, it's really nice that people get to find, people who they can relate with in the workforce. We recently went to this seminar, and then they mentioned that, did you know that if you have at least three good friends in your office, it will really have a significant increase on your intent to stay. Like at least three.
Yeah. So quick lang, in Gallup, one of their questions of the Q12 survey they use is, I have a work best friend. So you need to have a work bestie. Sorry, Keisha, go for it.
So it's true, no? Like really having connections within the team, even if they happen organically, like through interest groups, can really help. Now what we've seen is successful in other companies also is if you are a very I'll take it from two point of views now. If you're a small company, you can actually look at supporting, like if you see that that this group is really one of the key interests, you can link your activities to this. You can make this as part of how you bond as a team. Second is, if you are a bigger company and let's say there are a lot of different interests cropping up, that is also okay. I think what can help is you have more of like a governance framework. We've seen in other companies that they have this sort of policy to enable and to encourage people to even take this up on their own. There's like an accreditation process. If you remember when we were in college, and then there are different clubs and organizations, and then they go through the organization head office, and then they get their club accredited, and then when they are a club, they are given certain privileges, like they get a room in the building, or they get to borrow stuff from the facilities of the college, or they get even like a certain kind of like seed funding. So that's a similar model that can be adopted by companies if they see value in it, like if they see that this is also part of their employees' needs. You can have sort of governance policy or enabling framework so that people can have some support and feel also supported by the company, that their own interests as part of the overall life cycle are part of this.
Yeah, Keisha, let's go to the other side. So we did small companies earlier. Now the question is, for big organizations, how do you get a balance of the different activities / needs that employees have when you can't do everything and please everyone?
Oh my gosh, so true. So what I like when it comes to the employee engagement survey is that if you get one with the right statistics, it will really tell you which specific areas will move the needle, like which specific ones are the impactful ones for all of them. So if you're in a very big company, usually the engagement survey will even provide, or it should be able to provide for you cuts, like data cuts, like you have the survey result for the whole team and the whole organization, and it shows you key drivers of engagement for the whole organization. So if you're going to make certain activities that are for the whole organization, you can link it to the overall cuts key driver, whether it's growth and development, whether it's other kinds of initiatives. At the same time, since you have data cuts like per division, per department, it can be part of the leader in that department's goal or purview. Now they also make a localized version of something specific to their employee division's needs. If it's different from what the overall needs, you can also make localized ones. But I think what is most the way that you can have the best results is really to look at what's the most impactful. And I'll qualify most impactful because it's not necessarily the lowest score. It's not even necessarily the highest score. Sometimes it can be in between. But when your engagement survey tells you what the key drivers are, the ones that have the most correlation to engagement, it can help. So it might not be the lowest, again, it might not be the lowest score in your whole survey, but it's definitely something that's most important. So it could be something that you are sort of doing well in, or kind of doing well in, but not yet the best. And that's what you can link or base your initiatives on. So it's important to really look at what are the key drivers of engagement, especially if you're in a big organization and you really have to look at scale and how and what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that could be done across the group, as opposed to trying to do everything, because we have to really go with what will really move the needle on employee engagement.
Yeah. Keish, the next set of questions are kind of related, because this one is about how, like, if there are so many other factors outside of employee engagement's control, for example, if the company is going through a crisis, or the disengagement is about salary, and the company is not in a position to increase salaries because they're going through a tough time. And of course, that contributes to low morale, low productivity. So from an employee engagement perspective, like, how would you know that your programs are working if there are all these other factors happening that does lower engagement?
Right. So I think when you look at effectivity of your employee engagement initiatives, it helps also to, of course, you can't discount the effect that your situation has, but it's really it's there. It's really part of the situation. And it can happen that your engagement score could go down as a relation to it. I think you can, what I'll use as an example is the pandemic, which recently happened, right? So when that happened, and then we're all also using the engagement survey, what helps to contextualize your like what you should be looking at in terms of outcomes is to also look at benchmarks. So if it's like an industry concern, if it's a change that happened across the whole industry, for example, price hike in ganito ganyan, it helps to also compare with benchmark companies if if the way that your score fluctuated is normal, like if it went down by a couple of points, or way below or way above. Same thing with not just industry benchmarks. You can also look at global benchmarks if it's a global phenomenon, or country benchmarks if it's something that just happened to your country. So it always helps to have an external benchmark that is aligned with your context. And it also helps, aside from that, also to still look at your internal benchmark or what happened year on year. I think I just want to give a certain example in relation to the pandemic. So when we did our employee engagement survey, given the conditions of the pandemic, we were really bracing ourselves. Like, we were really like, okay, this is going to be low. Look at the world, look outside your window, look at what's happening. So we really thought it was going to be low. And then when we got the result, it was high. Like, we were really asking our partner, like, is this correct? Like, is this all right? And then what they shared to us, our survey partner shared to us, which they also saw in some companies who are able to manage a situation, is that sometimes when you have a crisis, what is good is if you as a team, as a leadership team and the HR are really able to work with employees to make the crisis not as uncomfortable as it can be. Like we're saying, good communication, frequent updates, making the organization feel like you're being honest about what's happening and that you're doing what you can, even if it's not perfect. That can really move the needle on engagement pa rin. So even if there are certain factors that happen, I think how we respond to them can still make a good impact. If we do the right kinds of response.
Yeah. The point here is a crisis is also an opportunity from a people practices perspective, right? So I think it's great to have those benchmark data points like what Keisha mentioned, because it helps you to show a leader like, hey leader, bumaba tayo dito pero dahil yan sa nangyari na to. And then for me, the opportunity there is to follow that up with, okay, yan yung nangyari because of this current reality. Pero if we want a competitive advantage over other companies in the same industry that we are working in, ito yung mga pwede natin gawin. I usually like to use those crisis data points as a prompt siya or forcing function siya to tell the leaders, oh, ito na yung reality, anong gagawin natin ngayon, di ba? I think that's what separates a great HR professional from just a good one. Because if you're just a good one, you'll show the data and you'll give the explanation. If you're a great HR professional, you'll show the data, give the explanation based on the benchmarks that you found, and then give your strategic plan of, okay, so now how do we make use of this crisis as an opportunity to show that we are taking better care of our employees, diba? So it's really finding a way to navigate that, use the current reality to push for the more strategic things that you want to get more budget for or more sponsorship for. All right. So here's what we'll do. I will ask Keisha one last question, and then we'll give you some of the instructions to wrap up, like in terms of certificates, etc. But I'll ask Keisha to stay after that so we can finish up some of the remaining questions that you have, okay? So everyone, just if you still have a question that I have not asked, we'll do it later after we do our reminders, okay? So Keisha, I get some questions about like, what if the employees are really shy, passive, not sociable? They don't like to get involved. So what are some tips that you have to encourage people to be more participative?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind is that there are many ways that we can participate. And we see different, like we see different programs really catering to or being more bent up to different kinds of personalities. So when you have in activities that are more about socializing, a certain kind of person will really like that, but others may not, and that's fine because we're not all the same. You know, we're all still human. But what can also help is, are there other ways that people can participate that are not necessarily like a social, like it's not necessarily direct. Like there can be you can send appreciation through email or through like a certain program or app, and then you can send it to employees. They can get badges by when you show appreciation. So it need not be necessarily always the same mode. But if there are people who are not participative, I think it's also good to like look at it within the context of the situation. If it's not naman like derailing the whole group dynamics, it's okay. But if it's someone who is like really closing themselves off from the rest of the team, there may be again something that we want to look at in terms of their situation. So I think it's good to always make engagement activities inclusive, meaning it's accessible, it's low barrier, but at the same time, we do accommodate different kinds of personalities, but let's also see the whole situation just in case there's something else that we can do to better support different employees.
Yeah, and with employee engagement and inclusion in general, just something to think about is people always want the power of choice. So I'll tell you now, I'll give you a little preview. So we are doing a study on diversity and inclusion because we got a lot of data on what makes people feel included versus excluded. So sabihin sa inyong lahat, di ba? Sasabihin ko yung pinaka-answer ng mga tao is they feel excluded pag di sila invited. Think about that, right? Like, even if, let's say, someone is more shy or someone is quote-unquote antisocial, just the fact that you invited them, it already means a lot. So think about things like that. Now, even if people don't really join you, give them the power of choice, give them the information that they need to be able to join you, and then see what that will do. So that's what we can think about. And Keisha, thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared with us today. Everyone, to quickly synthesize our learnings, here's the question for you. What insight or learning will you take with you from today's session? Please go and type a word, a phrase, a sentence in the chat. Please let us know what is something that you have learned from today. So go for it. Let's wait for some of those responses. Culture. Oh, Keisha, they picked up on your chi. I love that. Yeah, so now we have a new word for the day, and I'm going to tell you all, nung high school, Keisha was always our 𝗲𝗲𝗁. So she always gives the word of the day. That's why this makes sense that she gave us a new vocab. Okay. On brand, Kish, on brand. Oh, everyone's saying chi. Okay. Yep. So it's being customer-centric, holistic, and inclusive. That's very, very important. All right. Thank you all so much for being able to share your lessons. And I'm glad that these are your takeaways from the day. Very quickly, let me go through what's next. Okay. Please do connect with us. We are Elizha Corpus Consulting. If you are here, most likely you found us through Facebook. But if ever you are not yet connected with us, we are on LinkedIn and Facebook. I pasted the links there in the chat, so please do connect with us. Also, connect with Keisha on LinkedIn, and Keisha provided us with some more links about JG Summit and also their career center. So if you want to work with Keisha in the future, ayan, baka may opportunity dyan. And then, of course, for certificates, please go to tinyurl.com/HRspot-EMPENG, so employee engagement, okay? Please do that within 2 hours after the session. So we are going to close that after 2 hours. And then please stay tuned for our next webinar or book a call with us to learn more about our services. We create customized solutions. So we cannot send you a pamphlet or a brochure or anything like that, because everything is made from scratch, if you will. So please let us know if you want to talk to us about that, and we will schedule a call with you. What I'm going to do now is I am going to paste again the link to our survey. So just hold on, and then make sure to answer that evaluation form. All right, so that is it. If you need to go wrap up some work before lunch, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your presence, your questions, your being active in the chat. Thank you so much. It's great always learning from you. And then I'll see you next month if ever you have to go now. For those who can stay, we are answering some more questions that were left over from earlier. So please, you are welcome to stay with us. But again, if you need to go, then thank you so much for being here, and we loved having you. All right. Before we give Keisha the next question, let me just do one quick thing and share the link with our friends over at Facebook. All right. There we go. Now let's get back to answering those questions, okay? So Keisha, I think this question is just about getting some specific examples. Do you have examples of rewards that you've given in the past that employees seemed to like? Or are there like new quote unquote in trends that employees like to see nowadays?
Okay. When you mentioned rewards that people seem to like, I'll mention a specific program that we did within GG Summit, the corporate center. So we did this. It's like a recognition site. Like you have everyone has a certain number of points that they can give to anyone within the company. No, so it can be any level. It doesn't need to be your direct report. It doesn't even need to be your team. You can even give the CEO if you want. So you have a certain number of points for the year, and then people can later on redeem these points. Like they can use it. It's like they can use it in Robinson's supermarket, Daiso. You can use it in any Robinson's retail. But what was interesting was what you do is it's part of our JG Grateful Everyday initiative. You send points to someone, you choose the recognition card, so you choose like what kind of card, and then you type the message of appreciation. What we noticed though is that people aren't actually as attached to the points as they are to the appreciation sent. So even if you give like the minimum, even if you give like 1 point, what we notice is that people really feel good when they're appreciated. Like and what we wanted to espouse with the program is that we wanted really to have like an attitude of gratitude in everyday things. You don't need to wait for the big event. You don't need to wait for a big bang. It's really what matters also is what we do every day. So it can be as simple as, hey, thanks for helping me in that meeting, or like thanks for asking how I was today. It doesn't need to be very, very complex. But what I think I want to emphasize is that yes, it does help to put a sort of quantitative reward, but what we found was more impactful was people getting people to learn that they have to put very specific messages so that when they read it, it's like something you can go back to when you're stressed. When you're tired, you go back to the messages that people sent, and it's really like an extra boost of energy. Like it's worth the if there's certain like pago that you experience for doing certain things for other people in your initiatives. It really is so nice to see the encouragement from others. So that's an example I'll give of, I think, of a not so usual reward that we experience.
Sometimes it's funny because I think that adults are just big kids. Diba, imagine mo, nung high school or grade school, you like it when your friends tell you, wow, galing mo today, or ganda mo today, or thank you for being my friend. Or diba, when people go on like retreats or recollection, you write letters for each other to appreciate each other. And it seems like in every study, in everything researched about organizations, those same things are what employees appreciate as well. Like, you would think that as adults, quote unquote, we have outgrown the need for that. But no, it's a very human need to be appreciated, even for the little things. So I think that's the intent of employee engagement at the end of the day. Like, you want to target those very core human things that make you feel valued so you can do your best work. And I love how what Keisha described from a process perspective, for sure, mahirap yun, okay? That's the reality, right? Like getting something like that approved and implemented, and also getting the technology right, that's a lot of hard work. But get to the intent of it and what they're trying to do. Think about what version of that you can do for your own reality. And that really already helps with setting up your employee engagement strategies and activities. So I love that example, Keisha, because you can level it out into what the company has budget for or resources for. Mm-hmm. Okay, so next question. Okay, so this question is a little bit specific, Kish. How can you prevent an employee engagement activity like a town hall from becoming a grievance venue or from becoming an avenue for forming a labor union? I think this one is specific to the manufacturing setting, but in general, that does seem to be a worry, right, of some leaders or some HR people that town halls can be a source of complaints. So what's your take on that?
Okay, so I think I'll mention several things. The first one is there a way to prevent it? Like a very straightforward way to prevent people airing grievances? No. There's no straightforward way. But I think one of the things that result in that kind of thing is if there is no other way for people to share their feedback, for people to share like what they think, they will really turn to whatever is there. So I feel like it's more of a symptom, like it's indicative that people had not been given any other opportunity or not any, or if they had been given an opportunity, they felt like it was not acted on. That's usually what happens to those kinds of quote unquote grievances being aired out in a public setting. Because if there were other mechanisms in place for to be checking how people are doing, to be checking what their concerns are, hopefully they can already be surfaced there and even be like they could have even been delivered by people in a different kind of manner, no. Yun. So I think as what's really important is you really get to have your ear to the ground and know what people are thinking. I think that's where the empathy comes in. That's where the listening or the customer centricity comes in. Otherwise, there's really no straightforward way because you can't screen that, diba? They're just gonna say it when it's said. And we've seen also a lot of organizations wherein they really have like an open forum type at the end of the town hall, and it can actually help. I think this was done by some of the companies who had very strong communication practices even during the pandemic because all of people's questions were answered. If they were not answered there, or if they were raised there, people are already prepared for it, and it means that the company was thinking already of that viewpoint. But it's good to have other also channels for people to give their feedback.
Yeah. So what Keisha shared is a lot of the proactive things that you can do. That's a great lesson because if you already know what people might be thinking about or what they could complain about, then you can be proactive in mentioning those during your town halls, all hands, or whatever session you have. Now, maybe on the more reactive side, so paano kung meron talagang question na hindi mo na paghandaan, di ba? And this is where a lot of like being able to handle difficult conversations can come in. I also like to think that in those moments, that's where great leaders shine through. So what do I mean by that? I think if someone asks a difficult question and the leader shows that they listened, they're validating that I heard you, whether they know the right answer or not, kung maramdaman ng employee na pinakinggan sila at may gagawin ka to find out more in the future, yun yung makakatulong to manage it. So what can a leader say, diba? For example, you can say, wow, I hear you, I hear what you're saying. In reality, hindi ko po alam yung sagot or hindi pa natin yan nagagawa ng solusyon. Pero salamat dahil sinabi mo yan sa akin today. I appreciate your openness and your honesty. Let's work together to find a solution. Message kita or message ka ng someone in my team and pag-usapan natin, gusto ko pa malaman kung ano sa tingin mo yung pwede natin gawin para ma-solve to. So it's really about how you answer those questions and seeing it as an opportunity to kind of surface what really matters to my employees. I get it that a lot of leaders are scared to do town halls because of that, but I'm going to give you a specific example of a client I've had, okay? This client, also manufacturing setting, and because maybe like 5-ish years ago when they had a town hall with the factories, hindi na-handle ng maayos. So, because of that experience 5 years ago, natakot yung leaders to keep on doing it. And so they did not do any town halls with the factories for the longest time. Now they're trying to start it up again, and they're managing it better because they've learned about how to handle these conversations. And the feedback has been so good. Like, people are saying, sana po may ganito palagi, or sana palagi namin kayong nakakausap. And the original fear of it becoming a source of grievance or a source of disappointment, it actually became a tool for them to work better with the people in the organization. So think about that, di ba? Para sa akin, mas buti na yung nagko-complain kaysa hindi. Because if they don't complain, you wouldn't know what they want, right?
Correct. Or if people are, if certain orgs are scared of having a town hall, they might already kind of have an idea of what people will say. And it's usually when you don't address something, people are already talking about it. So if you don't address it, it's just going to get worse later on. So it's better that you're able to already discuss with people head on.
Yeah, that's such a great point, right? We all know that marites is such a thing, especially in the Philippines. So even if you don't talk about it, you best believe they are talking about it. So better to just have it out in the open, right? Versus something that people are sharing hush hush, and then you can't address it. All right, last few questions, Keisha. So can you give any specific examples of what's necessary and unnecessary in terms of employee engagement? So maybe things you've experienced in the past.
Okay, I think when it comes to what's necessary, at the end of the day, when we have different employee engagement related initiatives, or if we want to bring up employee engagement, what's necessary will, I think, aside from the 𝗁, will link up to the 𝗁. Like, it has to be based on what people need. It has to be holistic. It has to be inclusive. And I think when we talk about the H, the holistic, like having it be linked to your values, people should, it's no matter what form it comes in, no matter what kind of program or what facet of HR the initiative comes in, people should feel that you're espousing the value, the core values of what your company is saying. Like, we should walk the talk. If we say our purpose is like this, we should show it when we have activities for employees. What I would say is unnecessary, I think this is so subjective, no? But what I have seen sometimes that can be a pitfall is if we do something because we see other people are doing this kind of activity, pero hindi pala swak with what your employees really want to do. Like, maybe they're not the kind of people who want to do this kind of interest item, or they don't like this kind of activity, or they prefer this other kind of thing. So it really helps to avoid yung unnecessary by zoning in on what people want. Like, sometimes it's not even quantity. A common pitfall is if you do everything, tapos only, like, not all of it pala is really high take up, or not all of it pala is very impactful, because people, it was not perfectly aligned with what people really needed.
Yeah, sorry, Keisha, last two questions, because there's one question that came in that's nice. Okay, so the question is it worth it to care about disengaged people, or to just focus on the people you have who are engaged?
Interesting. Okay, so ito yung parang studies show, joke lang. What we've heard kasi in the practice is that usually there are three categories of people. There's the engaged. So they usually rate 4s and 5s. That's out of the 5 scale, 4s and 5s. You have people in the middle who usually rate like 3, you neither agree nor disagree, or like they're kind of like sitting on the fence. And then you have people who rate the lowest third, which is like 1 and 2, they're disengaged. Okay, so I think na if you're going to Pareto, or you're going to look at the prioritization, in terms of what you can act on, usually it's easier to sway those who are in the middle, you neither agree nor disagree, and keep those engaged. Keep the people who are engaged. But I think if you have the resources like time, energy, you can also do items for disengaged employees. But admittedly, they're going to be a little harder to sway. But it in terms of like feasibility, it's easier to act on those who are in the middle. But I wouldn't say like wholesale discount those who are disengaged, especially if you're a smaller team and you really like, there's potential that you can work with there in terms of these people. So I guess as a tip, I would say not to discount those who are disengaged. But if you really, really have to prioritize, it could be better to approach first those who are in the middle and those who are engaged. And then after that, work also on those who may be disengaged.
Yeah. Then siguro the other like perspective on that is those people who are disengaged, if they eventually like resign or they take themselves out of the organization, then that's a reality that you just have to face, diba? And sometimes we even say that if you are trying to transform into a different culture, or like you're trying new behaviors in the company and these are people who leave, then maybe these are the people that don't want to be a part of that new culture that you're trying to build, and that's okay, right? So it's also trying to weigh like, these people who are disengaged, are they the ones who I think will be impactful for the desired future state that I want for the organization? So something to think about. Keisha, last question. Okay, I think a lot of people can relate with this. What advice do you have for people who are not enjoying their job? They don't want to engage because they don't like the company, but they can't leave for,
Oh
maybe
my gosh.
personal reasons.
Wow. Okay, so ano to, when I did this other talk, it was related to dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT. So in the framework of DBT, there in a difficult situation, there are 4 options. Only 4 options. My memory is sometimes bad, so give me some time to recall it. But there are 4 options. One is you change the situation. So this could be you talk to your manager. Like, they should be someone who can hear you out, or you give your feedback in any channel that's available. The second one is you change how you feel about the situation. Like, if there's a way that you can regulate how you feel, if it's even possible, that's another one. The third one is like you radically accept situation. That doesn't mean that you think it's right, but that's how things are. So you radically accept. And the fourth one is you don't do anything. So the hard thing about what to do in a challenging situation, especially in the lens of dialectical behavioral therapy, is we have the 4, but the only one who will know what's the right one is you. Because you'll have to know kung ano yung mapapanindigan mo. Like, you have to assess within yourself, like, because sometimes the world is really, really difficult. There are many factors in the situation, and in an ideal scenario, people could be more mobile, people could go to another job, but sometimes they have to weigh na, do they have to stay here because of certain factors. The fourth one is to not do anything. So you'll have to weigh personally for yourself which one you are leaning towards. Me, like, if I would prefer if I can do option 1, which is I would try, maybe I would at least try number 1, which is try to change the situation by talking to someone at work who can help me on this, whether it's your manager, whether it's your someone who leads your team. I would try that first, but if it really doesn't work out, I may have to evaluate other options. So just to recap, the 4 options that you have in any situation from dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a framework by Dr. Marsha Linehan. She's a psychologist. The first one is to change the situation. You change the circumstances. The second one is to change how you feel about the situation. The third one is to radically accept the situation. I mean, like, you accept that it's a fact of life. And the fourth one is to wallow in your misery and do nothing. It's not necessarily but it's an option per se. Like, it's one of the 4 things that you can do. Just do nothing. But if you're going to wallow in your misery, you have to also accept the consequences. So what's important is you choose it for yourself.
All right. And everyone, I think that is it. Those are all the questions that you sent, Keish. Thank you so much for answering all of our questions. What I always love about these webinars is that people ask a lot, and I love hearing about what you're thinking, what's important for you. Everyone, that is it. 10 minutes to lunch. Go for it. Thank you so much for being here. I am going to end the live stream and close the Zoom in a bit. But again, thank you so much, everyone. And we are going to see you next month for our next session. So goodbye. Thank you all.